After the success of the Choose Your Own Adventure game Until Dawn, made by Supermassive Games, they decided to come out with a new game in 2022 called The Quarry. While this game has a lot of similarities to Until Dawn, like how you make the decisions and the aspect of trying to keep your characters alive, the story and characters are very different. And in this video, I'm going to be analyzing all of the playable characters in The Quarry. A while back, I went through all the characters in Until Dawn, and I rated them based on how good they were in the game, like what decisions they made, what they do for other characters. And a lot of people in the comments wanted me to do The Quarry, which is made by the same company as Until Dawn. It's very similar in the aspect of that there are a bunch of teens left for one night trying to defend themselves from monsters that they didn't know existed. While I think they were trying to copy the success and feel of Until Dawn, I do think that this game is very different. It's a very different take on the idea of survival and an unknown scenario. In Until Dawn, they're stuck at a ski lodge, and in The Quarry, they're stuck at a summer camp where they don't have any way of getting out, and they have to face werewolves. While I do think the characters in Until Dawn are better than the characters in The Quarry, I like the aspect of the werewolf idea with these characters because it kind of shows different sides of each of the characters, whether they're turning into a werewolf, whether they become a werewolf, whether they are not a werewolf yet. You see different insecurities come to life and different parts of their characters shown. And I do really like a majority of these characters. I think they did a good job of making new, unique characters, but still filling all the roles that you need in a horror game. Like in my last video, I'm going to be ranking all these characters in the same criteria as I did the Until Dawn characters. I'll give them a score of 1 through 5 based on their character, which is just like how good of a person they are, whether or not they help other people, how they treat other people, how they talk to other people, just kind of their goodness that they have. The second thing I'll be ranking for them is rationality, just how reasonable they are and whether they are able to handle the events that come to them. A lot of times these characters can get very irrational and lead to death and other people's death in really bad situations, so I feel like that's an important aspect to have when in one of these games. And then the last category is survival instinct, because these games, the whole premise is how good they are at surviving, and it's the idea of survival. So I think that's an important thing. And whether or not you survive longer does make you a better character because you have more time for growth and realizing your flaws. So I definitely have my personal preference of all of the characters, and if I were to rank them on how much I like them, it would be very different than what I'm going to be doing in this video. But I'm trying to get an overall just kind of like how good the characters are without biases. But some of my biases will probably slip through, so that's kind of impossible to avoid. But I'm going to try to be as unbiased as possible. Before I start ranking them in the categories, I want to go over all of the characters and just explain all of them first. I'm only going to be including the playable characters, not all of them that are shown at the end, and I'm not including Eliza because I'm mainly focusing on the counselors. Starting with Laura. Laura is a very unique character because they make you think that she's a nobody who dies at the beginning and you never see her again, but she actually comes back way later after a huge break of being gone and becomes the leader of the entire night. She has a very strong leadership, maybe one of the strongest leaders in any of the Supermassive games. Like, this is her strength. She tends to be a little bit bossy. She definitely likes to be in charge of every situation, but she also very much appreciates honesty. She wants Max to be honest with her, who's her boyfriend. She doesn't like when he hides stuff from her. She doesn't like when Travis hides stuff from her. She would prefer everyone just be very blunt about everything and get it out there and be honest with her about what's going on, because she doesn't care about knowing the truth as long as she does know it, which is something I really respect about her. She tends to handle herself pretty well in scary situations. She's someone who likes to go explore and find out what's going on. She's not afraid to go wander in the woods when she thinks someone's there. She's not afraid to go down to the storm shelter when she thinks someone's trapped down there. She's not afraid to help Max when there's a beast who's attacking both of them. No, she's gonna stay and help Max. She likes to get stuff done, and when she has a goal, she tends to go for that goal no matter what it takes. I would say maybe her biggest flaw is that she's just a little bit mean at times, where she doesn't really give a crap for anyone else. She's just worried about what she wants, which in this situation ends up really helping her, because it really is you have to fend for yourself, because you have to kill the other werewolves in order to survive. But she'll just go around shooting people if it means that she can survive. She'll go around not really worrying about anyone who isn't close to her. And I think that maybe she could be a little bit more caring towards others. She will care for new people if she has known them a little bit, like she does care about Ryan once she gets to know him. But for the majority of the game, she's really just worried about herself and Max and doesn't really care about anyone else. Ryan's character is a little bit interesting because the game tells you one thing about his character and then he actually acts like something else. I think this is very similar to how Ashley is in Until Dawn, where they tell you she's this sweet girl that everyone loves, but in reality, the actions she does throughout the game don't show that. And I think Ryan is the same way, where they present Ryan as the guy that everyone likes, everyone wants to look up to, everyone enjoys his company, and he's just not that pleasant to be around. He's usually really moody. He doesn't like to be around people. He doesn't like laughter. He doesn't like joking. Every time someone makes a joke, he doesn't really get it. Like, he doesn't respond to the joke. He's a very muted personality. He also takes everything very seriously, even when they're all just like trying to have fun. He's usually the Debbie Downer that just brings down the whole mood. And it's like, I'm not making this up. Like, this is what happens in the game. Like, everyone will be having fun and he'll come and then everyone's just like low. He's just not a people person. And so I'm not exactly sure why a bunch of people love him so much, because he's just not very nice. Ryan tends to not do very well with conflict. In fact, he tries his best to avoid it. He doesn't want to be the center of everything. He doesn't want to be involved with a bunch of drama. If it were up to him, everyone would stay in the lodge all night, which is actually the reasonable decision to make. But no one listens to him for some reason, even though they all respect him so much in the rest of the game. While Ryan's not the nicest person, he does care about others and he is willing to put himself in danger if he feels like he has to. I think Ryan gets better as the game goes along. We can see him grow into someone who's willing to do what has to be done, because he just does not like conflict at all. He doesn't want to face the challenges of the night. He wants to go be by himself and not have to do anything, but he will do what needs to be done if it means the safety of his friends. Ryan really doesn't want to be a leader, but he ends up having to be because no one else can do what he is doing. Like, Caitlin is busy at the lodge caring for other people, and Ryan has to step up and go help Laura because no one else is able to at the moment. But Ryan does become a big part of the game. He's the reason that they go and find Silas and they're able to end the curse, because if he's not alive at that point, they can't go find him. And I do appreciate him for what he is, but I don't think the game is completely honest about what they tell you he is, and he kind of reveals a different side of himself throughout the game. Caitlin is the typical bossy mean girl, but it's a very different take than you would usually find this role to be. What's really interesting about her character is she's really bossy and sarcastic and fake mean, but everyone really enjoys her company and loves her. Like, she's really likable, which is kind of odd because she's so mean to people, but it's all in good fun. Like, she's not actually mean, and she's really bossy too, which could come off really badly, but everyone seems to really enjoy her company. I think she's really good at being a leader and not being as annoying as it could be. I do think she's very skilled and she's very well under control, and she can keep herself calm in difficult situations, which is why she is put in so many leadership roles in this game. Like, the group does not waste Caitlin when they need someone to take charge, because she's the one who's going and searching the cabin when Nick is injured. She's the one who's telling Dylan what to do at the junkyard. She's the one who does that finale where she's trying to save everyone in the lodge. While Ryan and Laura are the biggest leaders because they're put in that role, Caitlin is the biggest leader of the group, where she's there defending everyone. She's there making sure everyone's good, and I think that's a really good role for her to fill. While Caitlin always acts like she's under control and she's got everything together, I do think she has a bit of insecurity, because there are some moments in the game where she kind of lets those show. And I think that she's one of those people who hides down her true emotions for the sake of everyone else being comfortable. Caitlin never cracks under the pressure in this game, and I feel like she's just really good at hiding all of her problems and all of her fear that she has. She definitely loves to be around people, and she definitely likes to make sure that all of her friends are safe. Dylan is a very unique character because it depends on the moment that you're in the game to what he's going to be like. Because at the beginning, he's just the typical goofball. He doesn't take anything seriously. Everything's a joke. And he's also a massive people pleaser where he just wants everyone to like him. He wants everyone to be happy. And if someone's upset with him, he doesn't like it. Dylan can't handle problems with people and he wants to just have fun. Like, that's his main goal, is having fun. But the part that I really like about Dylan is that he's pretty dynamic in the sense of, like, when things get serious, he will take it so seriously. Like, he will be the one who's willing to cut off his hand if it means that he's gonna survive. He sits there and comes up with a plan on how to scare the werewolf. When Caitlin's being attacked at the junkyard, he can literally sound the horn so that the werewolf will come up to him instead when he has one hand. And it's just, he will sit there and defend people to the end. How much he loves other people and his friends really shows throughout this game, I think, more than anyone else, because he will just do whatever it takes to make everyone happy and keep everyone safe. And if nothing's going on, he just wants to have fun with everyone. And if something's going on, he will take it very seriously. And I feel like I really respect him for that. He does tend to be a bit of a follower, but I think that goes with just him being a people pleaser. And I think sometimes people will walk all over him because of that. But I do think he's a really nice guy, and I think he's one of the most unique characters in this game. Abigail is presented in the game as the sweet girl who never does anything wrong and just cares about everyone, and that is exactly what she shows throughout the game. Like, she really doesn't do anything that wrong. She's so concerned about everyone, especially Nick, and she will do whatever it takes to make them comfortable. She's very introverted and doesn't like to do anything bad, and she's just always trying to do what's right in the eyes of whoever she's with. But she is very sweet and she cares about people, specifically when it comes to Nick and Emma. Like, she puts up with anything Emma throws her way, and it's very sweet. She's also willing to put Emma in her place, which is why I think their friendship works, because she doesn't let Emma just walk all over her and then be petty about it. And her and Nick are both very mature, so they're able to have really mature conversations, and that's fun to watch characters in this game who aren't complete idiots. One thing about her is that she's not as big of a leader as other people, so she's not always putting herself in the situations to go defend people as often. She can choose to stay back and help Nick, which is very selfless, and she just helps him the whole time that he's injured, and it's very sweet to watch. So she is going to put others first before herself. She's just not the one in the front lines who's like leading the group, because that's just not her personality. I think Abby is very underrated because she's not noticed as much as the other characters because she's not as big of a personality, but she really is a good person. Like, she doesn't really do anything wrong, and I feel like I can respect that. Like, she handles herself very well. She's able to keep herself calm in very scary situations. Like, she can face quite a few different scary situations in this game, and she always handles herself pretty decently. She has to face things that are really hard, and she doesn't like crumble during these situations. I feel like she could have been someone who was a good leader of the group, but she just doesn't want to be because it's not her personality. I think Nick is a really fun character, but unfortunately you don't get to see much of his character because he is a werewolf most of the game. But what we do see of Nick is that he's very nice, he's quiet, he lacks in personality a little bit, but he's very sweet to anyone and he likes to be there for people. He also just seems really selfless. Like, he's always just thinking of other people first. That being said, he will go along with other people if it means not standing out because he doesn't like to be the center of the attention at all. The main thing I really like about him is how respectful he is. Like, when you watch him with Abby, he is just so respectful to her in every part of that, and it's really nice to watch that because the other men in this game are not always as respectful, and it's hard to watch. So I like seeing a mature guy in the game, and they're not all idiots, like I was saying earlier. I like not seeing all of them suck. Nick's worst moments definitely come out when he's turning into a werewolf. He's probably the worst behaved turning werewolf out of anyone in the game. Like, he just is such a creep and super aggressive. And it's kind of interesting because he himself is not as aggressive and creepy. Like, I feel like Jacob would be more that way, but they really linger Nick's transformation and they really show all of his negative sides through that moment. I don't believe that that is all him because it is part of the werewolf. Like, we see other people get aggressive as well. I do think it brings his insecurities to light. So the fact that he likes Abby but he's nervous about it comes out when he's turning into a werewolf. This being said, kind of like I was saying with Caitlin, I think he hides a lot of his emotions so that he doesn't make other people uncomfortable with them, and he struggles to show a lot of that unless he's turning into a werewolf, which he always does. There's nothing you can do to stop him from saying all these things and being creepy and doing all of this. But again, I don't think it's his fault. I think the majority of his personality is who we see before he's turning, and I don't really blame him for a lot of those things that he does and says when he's turning into a werewolf, because it's not him. The guy that he is not as the werewolf and he is as the werewolf are very different, and I think that's something you just have to understand about this curse that happens to these characters. Emma is a very interesting character because she's just so mean, and it's hard to watch sometimes because she just does these things and you're like, why are you doing that? While she is always being mean and creating unnecessary drama, she does have a heart for people who she really cares about. We see this with her friendship with Abby, which I really think this friendship was a good decision because it shows that she does have a heart and she is capable of loving someone other than herself. Even with her and Jacob, we can see that she completely manipulates him and she does not really love him no matter what she says, because she just wants to mess with him in every situation and is leading him on the whole game, and it's just really frustrating to watch. She gets really frustrated with Jacob later on when she tells him no and he's struggling to take that answer, which is fair, but she also is kind of leading him on during parts of the game, and it's kind of like, okay, if you're doing that, then he's gonna struggle to take no for an answer, so you might not want to give him any hints. So it feels like she's just creating unnecessary drama, which can be a really toxic trait, which is not a great thing about her. I think it just comes down to immaturity. Like, she's just very immature in a lot of different situations. She creates drama at the campfire that's unnecessary. She leads Jacob on a lot of times, and it's like, why are you doing that when you don't like him? I don't think she handles herself in social situations very well because she knows she's pretty and she knows she can kind of do whatever she wants because of that. One aspect of her character is that she's on social media, and she definitely has that kind of personality where she's trying to please everyone and look cool to everyone, I guess. She does act like this with the other characters as well, where she feels like she has to keep up this status that they will all respect. I do think that she's a fun person, and she just is a little immature, which I do think is something that she'll eventually grow out of, but we don't see that in this game. Throughout the whole game, no matter what you do, she doesn't really mature at any point, and she doesn't have an arc at all, which I wish she did, because I actually really like Emma. I really like that character. It's just hard to watch that she doesn't grow through anything. I do like that she is the first one to face a real death chase scene with the werewolves, because she's kind of a jerk and then she has to face that. It kind of reminds me of Emily a little bit in Until Dawn, when Emily is the first one to face the Wendigos. And one really good thing about Emma is just that she's very confident. I think her confidence really shines through every situation, and it definitely makes her a lot more likable than if she didn't have that. If she was really insecure and a brat, like, that's really a negative duo. So I do like that she's confident in herself, and I do think that helps her with her journey through the quarry, because she's able to get through that chase scene and do a lot of unique things. Like, she does show her survival instinct through that situation. I think her confidence helps her keep herself together through all of those scary situations. Now, Jacob is a very unfortunate character because he is just completely consumed by his insecurities, and it's really hard to watch. I would say the main thing about him is that he just cannot emotionally control himself. He lets every emotion he ever has take over him, whether it's anger, whether it's sadness, whether it's getting in his head about something. Like, he just always gives in to every insecurity he has. Like, I would love to say more than this about him, but literally this is his entire character throughout the whole game. He gets really mad when things ever don't go his way, to the point to where he's literally sabotaging the car so that they're all stuck there for one night. Like, that is so messed up. And he really doesn't even ever care. Like, he pretends he does, but he really doesn't. And he'll just get angry at whatever when it doesn't go his way, and he'll do whatever he can to make things go his way. Like, him and Emma would never ever work because he is just so so not ready to be with anyone because he's so immature. Whenever anyone hurts his feelings, specifically Emma, he'll just like cry and throw a fit or whatever. When anyone makes fun of him for not being good enough, he just takes it to heart every time. And it's like, dude, lighten up a little bit, please. Like, this is the entire game. This is his entire personality. There's never really a moment where he shows any confidence or any severe positive trait. The best thing that he ever does is that when he hears Abby scream in the woods, he will go and try to help her. But for a majority of the game, he's just in the woods by himself, which is very fitting because no one wants to put up with him and he just runs off whenever he's upset. I definitely think Jacob is a very flawed character, but I do think that that's an important role to have in one of these games because you try to deal with that. Like, you as the player are making his decisions, but you can't completely control everything he thinks and feels, which is very different than playing as someone like Abby, who's very stable and able to keep herself together. So while Jacob is very annoying, it's very realistic, and I think that him as an emotional guy could be a good thing if he just like went to therapy and was able to control himself a little bit more. He very much reminds me of Josh from Until Dawn because both of them just have all of these emotions that they can't handle and they need help, and they're going to the wrong places to get that help, and it's just really sad to watch that happen because you want to help them, but they're not able to be talked to in a normal, mature way. Even though 95% of the game, Jacob is just upset or whatever, at the beginning of the game, we can see that he's very lighthearted and likes to have fun. He doesn't take a lot seriously, kind of like Dylan, and they both kind of bond over that. He's one of the ones who really wants to have the party on the last night and wants to just have fun and have a good time. And the last character is Max, which is the person I definitely feel like we see the least of, because even though he's in the background of one of the entire chapters and we see him at the beginning, we see him at the end, we never get to play as him until the end, so I feel like you don't get to kind of know his thoughts and his feelings about everything, and they're all kind of behind Laura. Everything that he goes through is just kind of bouncing off of what Laura's going through. A big part of him is that he is Laura's boyfriend because he doesn't lead that duo in any time ever. But I do think that Max is really sweet. We see that he really does care about people, and him and Laura have this really special bond that I really like to see. Like, I do believe that they get married after this game because they just really work together, and he and her communicate really well, and they go through this event like there's no way they don't get married after this game. But Max doesn't like conflict. He likes to hide things rather than tell the truth because he doesn't want people to be upset with him. He wants to make sure everyone's good. He's another people pleaser. He just likes everything to be happy and nothing's wrong. Even when they're stuck in jail, he's like cracking jokes because he doesn't want to take it seriously because he just doesn't like the conflict of it all. He's also just not the smartest, which is why it's so funny to me that he's the one who figures out that he is a werewolf and Laura doesn't. I think because the idea of werewolves is just so out there that you need like an out there mind to get there. Laura is too factual, so she can't get there until Max, who gets there, is just like, I think I'm a werewolf, and then it all makes sense. So while Max isn't smart, he's very creative with his thoughts and what he does, and I think that's a really fun balance for Laura to have. The main thing about Max is that he really cares about Laura, he really cares about people he loves, and he's a fun guy who's definitely a follower. But I think that he would have been such a fun character to have as a real role in this game, but I do think that they don't need everyone to be that way, and that him being Laura's boyfriend and he only has one playable scene maybe is okay for what they were trying to do. That's all the characters in the Quarry. I think there's positive things about all of them. There's definitely negatives about a lot of them, but they also all go through a very different journey throughout the game, which I can appreciate because some of them grow a lot more, some of them don't change at all, and it's just interesting to see what your decisions do to change their arc in the Quarry. When it comes to character, I think Laura is very split because if she cares about you, she will defend you to death. And if she doesn't care about you, she will shoot you to save her own life. So it's like, what is she gonna do depending on how much she likes you? She definitely isn't like a perfect person because she just is a little bit selfish sometimes. For example, she sits there and stays to save Max. She won't even leave the jail when she has the opportunity to, but she'll go and shoot Kaylee Hackett without even giving a thought about it because she wants to save Max. So I think her shooting Kaylee Hackett is definitely one of her worst moments, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. In her defense, she is a monster at the time, but she does know that these monsters are real people. She already has that information by the time she does it, and no matter what, she'll do it, and she has zero remorse. Like, she does not care at all once she finds out that it was Kaylee Hackett. She's like, that wasn't a girl, that was a monster. And it's like, okay, maybe we can feel a little bit bad for what we just did, but she does not. We see later at the Hackett house that she shows a lot of care towards Ryan once they get a little bit closer, and she's sitting there willing to save his life when they don't really have time, and she's literally turning, which shows good on her character. She's also really rude to Travis, though, when she's in the jail. So, like, she can say some really mean things and get him to kill her because she's so annoying. Which, he's very annoying, too, so that makes sense. But I feel like it's safe to say that she's at a 3, just because it kind of depends on the situation she's in, on whether she's going to be nice or not. And I think that's, like, actually good, because you need someone who's like, okay, we need to get this done, or else no one would survive the werewolf curse. If she wasn't the way she was, Max would not be alive, because no one would go and kill Chris Hackett. So I think it's very necessary, but I do think she's at a 3. I feel like Ryan doesn't really do a lot of things that prove him either way. I feel like his main vibe of the whole game is just that he's moody and rude and annoying. He's just not very pleasant to be around, and he's not nice. Like, he's not a nice person. He's always telling people off. He talks to people so rudely. Like, I'm shocked that they're telling me that anyone likes him, because he's so rude in all of his responses. So I would say he's super low, because every situation he's just so rude. But he does go and save Nick when Nick is in the woods hurt. He can ask if Caitlin wants to do it. He can try to get Caitlin to do it, which is kind of stupid, but he will go do it, and it's a very courageous move. So I feel like he's at a 2, because the majority of the game he's just not very nice to anyone, but he will do one nice thing. So he's not a 1. He's not like never ever good, but he's not great. So he's definitely low. Well, Caitlin is really mean and sarcastic. I feel like it's always in a joking way where she's just having fun, and people do take it that way. Like, not a lot of people besides like Jacob or Ryan, who are just moody and take everything too far, will get offended by that. Like, she is just a really fun person, and she is really caring about other people. I don't think her sarcastic comments that she makes in the beginning of the game are actually intended to be rude. I think she's just messing with people, and I can appreciate sarcasm and fun, rude humor. I also feel like when it really comes down to it, she's the one who's defending other people. Like, she's saving other people. When Nick is injured and they hear a noise in the house, she's the one who's going to go investigate it every time. Like, she doesn't even care if he tells her not to. Like, she's going to go do it. If Emma's a werewolf in the car, she will sit there and defend everyone else. Like, she will sit there and to save everyone. She also saves Dylan in the finale in the lodge. Now, she can also leave Dylan to die a couple times if she makes the other choice, but I feel like at the root of her character, she's always trying to keep him alive and keep other people alive. And we can see in other parts of the game, like when she goes to keep Nick safe and tells Jacob to give them the gun because they need protection, she does care about the safety of other people, but she can make those bad decisions, and she does have control on a lot of other people's life. I think she's at a 4 because she is really caring and she is worried about the safety of other people. Dylan is definitely a good guy. Like, he cares about other people even when things aren't going on, but when things go down, he definitely is trying to save people. Where he saves Caitlin at the junkyard, I think that's his biggest moment where he shows his selflessness. Like, he, again, will be willing to put the werewolf on himself so that Caitlin is safe. And I think he's just trying so hard to navigate that situation so that he can save Caitlin. Him and Caitlin have a really sweet friendship that I really enjoy to watch. The other thing he'll do is he'll go to the radio hut with Ryan when they need to contact someone for help, which is a selfless act, and I think that's not noticed as much. Like, that's pretty scary to go out in the woods when you know there's monsters and go try to do that. So I do think he's a very selfless person, and I think that's included with his character. Some of his not as good moments are when Chris Hackett tells them not to go outside and not to have a party, and he's literally the one who convinces everyone else to go against it when they know that they're not supposed to. And I feel like Chris Hackett is just so worried in this moment. Like, he clearly looks like he's upset about something, and Dylan doesn't care at all, and he tells them all to go party outside anyway. So I don't really like that. Of course, they have to do that so that the game will happen, but that's not his best moment. The other thing he does is he makes Abby a little bit uncomfortable at the party once it gets started, so I don't love that moment either. So I don't think he's perfect in his character. So I think I would put him at a 4, because I think he is definitely one of the better people in the game with their character, but I don't think he's the best. I think Abby literally proves her character in every situation. Like, she really is just the typical nice girl. Whoever she's with, she's very kind and caring towards them. We see a lot of this when Nick gets injured. In the woods, she'll try to save him even though she literally can't. When he's hurt, she's like bringing him food and trying to turn on the heater so that he's comfortable. Even after he's been super creepy towards her, she's literally still trying to make him comfortable, and that is so nice of her to do. The other character we really see this with is Emma, where she'll be really sweet towards Emma even though Emma is so self-absorbed. Like, Emma is only ever talking about herself, and Abby will still be a friend to her and talk to her about what's important to her. And I really like to see that. If Abby and Emma end up in the basement together and neither one of them are infected, Abby will put Emma in her place, which I feel like could be seen as a negative, but I really don't think that's negative at all. I think Emma really needs to hear that, and Abby telling her that is her being a good friend. Like, a good friend would tell you the truth. A good friend would tell you what you need to hear instead of what you want to hear. And I feel like that's not a toll on Abby's character at all, even though she's a little bit not the nicest in this moment. I think that that is what Emma needs. I guess Abby's worst moment would be when she shoots Nick when he's about to turn, but literally she dies if she doesn't shoot him, so I don't think that's a toll on her character either, because like she literally has to, and he's a monster. Like, he's clearly a monster at this point. He's thrown her across the room and she needs to defend herself, so I don't think that's a problem, and I can't say that I wouldn't do the same. So I do think Abby's a 5 in character. I think this is her best category, and she really shows that she has a good heart throughout the game. It's really tough to rank Nick on this because he does have good character, but then he turns into a werewolf, and for like 80% of the game, he's like weird or a werewolf. So it's like, yeah, he doesn't have great character during those times, but it's not really his fault. In the beginning of the game, we see that he's very sweet, and better than that, that he's really respectful. Like in his conversations he has with Jacob about Abby, he's very respectful, and she's not even there, which means he's doing that behind closed doors, which I really, really appreciate. He seems to be very intelligent and very thoughtful, and just like a really good, mature guy, which I really appreciate. Of course, he has his moments when he's a werewolf, where he's really creepy with Abby by the pool, and he'll yell at her, and right before he turns, he says some not very nice things to her. Like I said, I don't think this is his fault. I know it's the infection, but I do think it's some of his insecurities brought out, so I think maybe he should be a 4 for that. I don't think he's perfect just because the majority of the game is this bad side of him, which again, I don't think is necessarily his fault, but unfortunately he does always get bit. He does always do these things, and they're not good. So I kind of see it as the same as like Josh, how Josh has a mental disorder in Until Dawn, which causes him to do a bunch of bad things, which is not an excuse, but it's like looking at the reasoning behind it. And while I don't want to blame him for that because he doesn't realize what he's doing, he does do it. So it's like you can't like say he didn't do anything wrong because he does, similar with Nick. So I do think Nick is at a 4 because of this. I think Emma wins the award for the worst character in this game. Like, she just doesn't have a conscience, and it's very, very clear throughout what she does in this game. There are just so many situations where she makes the wrong move for the sake of creating drama, and like I said earlier, that's very toxic. The main thing she does throughout the game to show this is the way she talks and acts with Jacob, where she's just kind of cruel to him. She's trying to mess with him because she knows he likes her and he's like obsessed with her. So it's just not a very good thing to do. While he is definitely in the wrong for the way he behaves, she's not really in the right either because of the way that she handles the situation. There's so many other mature things she could do, and she doesn't do any of them. Another thing she does wrong is when she kisses Nick in front of Abby, which she doesn't ever really apologize for, and it's just not a very good moment for her. It makes her look really mean, and I don't think that she meant for it to be as mean because she's only thinking about hurting Jacob. She's not thinking about hurting Abby, but that's exactly what she does. So it's not a good look. Another thing she does that I really don't like is that she vlogs all of this drama. Like, I know it's not live, but she's sitting there telling the entire world about all of these private details about Jacob and Abby, which is just so messed up. Like, I can't believe that she thinks that's okay. Like, why would either of them want anyone else to know about all of this crap? Specifically Abby. I know Abby would not want all of that information said on vlog, which I believe she's planning on posting it. So why in the world would she say all that information? And not only is she doing all of these bad things, but she also, like, just doesn't do much good. Like, she doesn't really care about anyone else's safety except herself. She will be a little bit upset if Abby dies, but, like, that's not really her being there. And, like, that, like, who wouldn't be sad about that? Like, that's evil if she's not sad that her friend died. She'll go and hide in the car when everyone else is facing stuff. She doesn't even go try to help. She does try to look for them, but once she's like, nope, no one's here, she just goes and hides in the car, which is very fair. Like, that's probably what I would do. But I just don't think she's got it on her mind that she needs to go help anyone else. Emma's nicest moment is in the beginning when she's talking to Abby about Nick and encouraging her about that, but that's not really enough to make her higher for character, and she goes and kisses him later that night. So I think she's at a 1, and I don't think there's anything that's gonna be able to raise her up to anything else. She really doesn't prove herself in any situation in this game. Like, this is her worst category for sure. Similar to Emma, I don't think Jacob really proves himself much either in this game of doing anything really that good. The worst thing for sure that he does is that he sabotages the car and makes everyone sit there and have to face the werewolves. And even when he knows that there's werewolves, he doesn't even think to say, oh, I have the rotor arm. Like, there's a chance that he could have the rotor arm. And he doesn't even try to give it to anyone to fix the car. Like, he is so selfish that he's willing to make others die so that he can have whatever he wants that he doesn't even get. Like, this is maybe the most selfish thing in the entire game. Obviously, I can talk about his character throughout where he gets angry and mopey, but like I've already talked about that, that's obviously a negative. He also has a moment where they're shooting the gun and he gets made fun of, and then he aims it at Caitlin and Nick, which is just so messed up. Like, who does that? Like, that's psycho level weird. And I don't know why he does this. And Caitlin takes away the gun from him, which, thank goodness, but this is just so horrible to watch. He also just lies sometimes. Like, he'll say things that aren't the truth so that he looks cool, and it's, like, kind of annoying. Because, like, why? We're all dying, and this is not a time to look cool. While his character is very low, I do think he has some moments where he cares about others. I think his best moment in the game for sure is when he goes and tries to save Abby. Like, he's literally there with Emma, which is all he wanted, and he hears her scream, and he does go try to save her, which I really respect him for this. I think if they would have shown a couple more moments like this, I wouldn't dislike him as much as I do. So I think his character is at like a 2 for this because he does go try to save Abby. He can act remorseful at the end, while I don't really believe it that much because had he been remorseful, he probably would have done something different earlier than the end of the game. But I do think he has somewhat of a good heart. He's not as cruel as Emma is, and I feel like for that, he deserves a 2. Max is going to be the toughest to rank out of all these because we just don't see a lot of his character, but I do think that he has good character. Like, we see throughout every scene he's in that he really cares for Laura. He's always sweet to her unless he's turning into a werewolf, which again, I don't think is his fault. The thing about Max is he doesn't do anything super great, but he also doesn't do anything super bad. He can be really rude to Travis in the jail, which I feel like is fair because Travis is locking him up and they don't even know why, like, and he's giving them no information. But he also lies to Laura about the college letter, which, I mean, is just dishonesty, which really doesn't work well with Laura because she appreciates honesty. So I guess that's kind of bad, but again, it's not that bad. Like, he's just like insecure about it. For a majority of the game, he's really just following Laura, but I don't think he has like super bad character or super great character. I definitely think he's in the middle. So I have him at a 3, which makes sense because Laura is also at a 3 and he's kind of just following her. So I feel like that's very fitting for him. I feel like Laura, while she does just go around shooting people, is actually a very rational character because the reason she's doing that is because she's trying to stop this werewolf curse. And while you could say like, oh, she's just going around shooting werewolves without even thinking, like, she is right. Like, no one else wants to go shoot Chris Hackett. No one else wants to go around killing the werewolves to end the werewolf curse. And that's literally what ends up ending the curse because she's willing to go kill Chris Hackett. She's the one who leads that and she goes and does it. And it's honestly, like, it's an irrational scenario where she's handling it rationally, I feel like. She's very straightforward. She's like, this needs to be done and we don't have time to waste. And she's right. Like, everything she does, while it seems super blunt and horrible, like, it's the situation that you're in, and it's kind of like what do you do when you're in a horrible situation and the only option you have sounds really bad? I don't love that she has to kill Chris Hackett, but like that's the only thing you can do to be able to survive this game. Another thing I find really interesting about her is that when she's bitten as the werewolf, she is able to like fight the werewolf curse more than anyone else in the game. Like everyone else kind of turns into this different person before they turn into the werewolf, and she's sitting there fighting it, like saying no to it, which is so interesting. She has the most rational werewolf turn that is in the game. It's really unique. I think the closest thing we see to this is when Dylan's turning and he's yelling at Caitlin to get away. But even him, he's like screaming and he's freaking out. So the fact that she is like completely composed and trying to stop the werewolf turn is unbelievable. And I think it shows on her rationality. One thing she does that's kind of irrational is just while she's in jail, she can do a lot of irrational things because she's losing her mind. She comes up with a lot of bad ideas. And, you know, I don't blame her for that because, like, being locked in jail for 2 months when you don't even know why is pretty unfortunate. She can also shoot Travis when she's in jail, which is kind of irrational. She does have some irrational choices. So I think she's at a 4 because she's definitely one of the most rational people in the game. She just has some moments where she's not making the best choice and she's not coming up with the best plan. I think one of the most irrational things Ryan does is he'll just get mad at people when they're in a tough spot. Like, he doesn't handle really bad situations well. Like, when a werewolf is attacking him and Dylan at the hut, he'll start getting mad at Dylan, and it's like, dude, why didn't you just tell me there was a werewolf outside, because that would have been a lot more helpful? And then he just gets mad at Dylan. It makes no sense. When Jacob's like begging him to get out of the cage, Ryan is just getting mad at him. And it's like, dude, I'm locked in this cage and I'm gonna die, so please help me. And it's like, now is not the time to get mad. We need to get the situation handled and then you can get mad later. And I don't like that Ryan does this a couple times in the game. Because he also does this with Laura when Laura's trying to give them information and he just gets mad at her. And it's like, dude, just listen to the story and then we can figure it out. Like, we just need to get through the night. And he always gets mad. He just doesn't handle conflict well. Also, going back to what I was saying about being in a rational situation, the fact that they're in this werewolf situation and he's watched Nick explode into a werewolf in front of him. He's watching, like, people get bit. He's seen the monsters. He's seen everything they can do. And he's still not accepting the fact that there's werewolves after Laura has explained all of this. He's like, you're crazy. And it's like, what are you talking about? All of these events wouldn't make sense if this wasn't all true. I understand that it's kind of hard to accept the werewolf situation, but the fact that he's watched all of this happen, he's like, no way it could be werewolves. Like, you're crazy for that. I don't think that's a rational moment for him because you're literally not lining up with things you've seen. Like, you've seen him turn into a werewolf. Why would you not think that something weird is going on? I don't know. This moment makes no sense to me. And everyone else is like on board. They're like, yeah, we've seen it. Like, this is true. Like, if you're watching it in front of your eyes, I'm pretty sure it's real. So why is Ryan the only one who's not willing to accept this moment? Especially since he's the one who's obsessed with ghost stories. Like, I feel like he would. So this kind of goes against his character. This moment makes no sense. He's just not good with bad situations. And also, like, when he's supposed to go into the woods and save Nick, he can have the option to try to get Caitlin to do it, which I think is such a wimpy move. And then also when Laura has a bite and it's been exposed, he can ask Caitlin, what do I do? Which is just a little bit pathetic. I don't think he completely loses his mind like some of the other characters do, but I do think he handles a lot of situations irrationally. I don't think he proved himself to be a rational person. So I would put him at like a 2. I don't think he deserves anything higher than that, and I can't think of a situation where he really handles it super well. Caitlin, I definitely think it's a very rational character, and it's why she gets put in all the situations she does, and it's why she's the one who has the gun, is because she's the one who knows how to handle it. Unfortunately, Caitlin can make some bad decisions that kill quite a few other characters. Like, she can run off and kill Dylan and Abby at the car. She can shoot Emma with the silver bullet when she knows that it might be Emma. She can leave Dylan to die quite a few times while they're in the finale at the lodge. She also really freaks out when she's at the junkyard and the werewolf is attacking her, but I do feel like that's kind of justified. Like, I would not be any better off, so I feel like that's unfair of me to get onto her for that. Like, that reaction makes sense. One thing I wouldn't call irrational, but I just find it really stupid, is that Jacob asks her how to sabotage the car. And she tells him exactly, like, step by step how to sabotage the car. And then the car is sabotaged, and she doesn't even question that it might have been Jacob when she just gave him the exact information that he needs to do so. So it's like, why in the world would you not make the assumption that Jacob has something to do with it? And why would you give him a step-by-step instruction manual on how to do so? I don't know if this is really irrational, but stupidity isn't really a category, so I think this kind of falls into irrational. But I do find Caitlin to be a very rational character, and she does handle herself well, decently in scary situations, so I think she's at like a 4. I think she proves herself to be a rational character in a lot of the situations she's put in. Dylan is like the biggest joke character, but I do feel like that he's a really rational guy. Like I was saying earlier, when it comes down to it, like he will get it done. I think he really shows this at the junkyard. I think that's his moment to shine, where he sits there and he sees someone coming and he does what he needs to do to save Caitlin. A lot of people will make it through this scene alive. So I think that this shows that he is able to handle a really tough situation really well. This is a really tough situation he's put in because he's operating a piece of machine that he's probably not super used to try to save Caitlin, and it's really stressful. And he just is like, I got this. I don't know if I would call this rational or irrational, but obviously he has the situation where he gets bit and he cuts off his hand. I could see it being argued either way, that it's irrational because like, why would you cut off your hand when you don't even know what it is? But also rational because he did make the right decision and he stopped himself from getting infected. So I don't know if I can use this either way because it's kind of irrational, but like it was the right thing to do. So it kind of is a wash. While Dylan is really serious when something is currently going on that's bad, he will make jokes at inappropriate times where like they're in a really tough spot and their friends have died and he's making jokes, which I mean, I guess to make the game more fun, they're gonna have him make jokes, but it just doesn't really fit with the situation. So I feel like that is a little bit odd. And he does, like I said earlier, while he's turning, yell at Caitlin to get away, which is one of the more rational turns, but he is also screaming bloody murder as he does this. So I don't know if I would consider him the most rational. I don't think he's any more rational than Caitlin, so I think I would also put him at a 4. I think that's a good spot for him because he does prove himself, but he does have some moments where I'm like, okay, maybe you could have handled this a little bit better. I really do think that Abby is an underrated character because she does prove that she's pretty rational in this game. Like, she goes through a lot of tough situations and she gets out of it pretty well. When she's in the woods and Nick's attacked, she will try to save him, and also she will be able to escape even if she gets bit. Like, you cannot kill her there, and she's the first one to face anything, so they don't even know something's wrong yet, and she is able to get out of there without dying, which is really impressive. The fact that she just went through something so horrible and Nick's stuck in the woods and she can still try to save him and still escape just really says a lot about her rationality. Not only that, when she gets back, she's able to sit there and talk with Caitlin and draw what attacked Nick. She hasn't like gone into shock, which is probably what would have happened to me if I were in that situation. Also, when Nick's really acting up and he's starting to turn and he's starting to kind of like be weird, she handles all of those situations really well. Like, he's sitting there getting mad at her for no reason because he's turning into a werewolf, and she just kind of like takes it and keeps her calm, and she doesn't like get out of hand no matter what you choose. No matter what dialogue you choose, she will never like get really out of hand. Even when he's turning into a werewolf, I feel like she handles that situation really well. Like, she'll just sit there and go, okay, Nick, I've had a lot of fun with you this summer. You're a little bit different right now. Like, she doesn't freak out in any situation during this really horrible moment. And even when he throws her across the room, she's able to do what she needs to do to survive, which I can really respect. I just feel like she's really calm and reasonable through every situation, even past when Nick turns. Like, if Emma's a werewolf in the car, she'll just run to safety. Like, that's a pretty rational reaction. And even before anything happens, when she is upset about what happens at the Truth or Dare, unlike Jacob, who runs off really angry, she just kind of calmly walks off. She's clearly upset, and she goes to just calm herself down by herself, which I feel like is a very mature way of handling that situation. She doesn't get mad, she just goes off to the woods by herself so that she can calm down, and like, that is unbelievable self-control. I do think that Abby is the most rational character, so I think that she deserves the 5 out of everyone, and she just proves herself in every situation. I don't think there really is a situation where she acts super irrationally, which is very impressive for being a character in the Quarry. When it comes to Nick, we can take off a point because he's clearly irrational when he's turning into a werewolf. Everything he does is really irrational in that moment, but he himself is a very rational person. Like, he is very calm in bad situations twice he puts himself at risk so that he can keep Abby safe. The first time is when he does it when there's the pig that attacks her. He can jump out to save her. And then also when they're in the woods and they hear something, he gets in front so that she won't be attacked, which I think is a very rational and great thing that he does. While he doesn't have a lot of time to prove that he is a rational person because he's the first one to face something and he already starts turning, I do believe that him stepping in front of Abby and being willing to take the fall for her is him being a rational, leader. And I think that that is really nice to see from him. He proves that in the very, very little time that he has, and I think that is something to be said about his rationality. So I think Nick is at a 4. I know he doesn't have a lot of time to prove that, but I think he really does in the time that he has. I do also think that he handles all of his situations pretty well, even when he is attacked, because he's just very selfless in the way that he does it. Emma is definitely not the most rational character. In fact, I think she's one of the worst ones just on who she really is with creating drama and being a little bit toxic. I do think that she wouldn't be able to handle herself as well in her chase scene if she didn't have somewhat of some rationality. So I do think that she's kind of got a little bit, but in a majority of the situations that she's in, she doesn't really prove herself. Obviously, she can hear a noise in the attic and just open the door without even thinking to search for something to defend herself and instantly die. Also, when her and Abby are in the basement and neither one of them are infected, she'll start twirling around and just be super positive, which makes no sense for the fact that they're going through a horrible situation and they should be trying to look for a way to help other people. And Abby's literally like, why are you so happy? And she's like, I don't know. And then obviously as Emma turns into a werewolf, she will be a little bit irrational if she's with Abby or even by herself. She's definitely one of the more irrational turns just because she gets really angry for no reason. But again, that's the infection, not her, but it is her insecurities. So I do think she's at a 2. I don't think she's super rational. I think the rationality that she does have is what helps her survive on the island by herself. But other than that, she doesn't really prove herself that much. Jacob really has no rational moment. He is just an irrational mess the entire game, no matter what you do. Whether or not he's infected, it really doesn't matter. He basically will be a werewolf, whether he's a human or not. No matter what you do, he will just be so horrible and irrational. Obviously, his irrational moment that he has is messing up the car so that everyone's stuck there with the werewolves. He also just complains about Emma the entire majority of the game, and it's just not the time to be worried about that. When he gets mad at the shooting range, he points the gun at people. When he gets hurt at Truth or Dare, he runs off crying. It's like every situation he acts like a baby. I'm sorry. When Nick's been attacked and Caitlin and Ryan are trying to defend him, he tries to take the gun from them when they need it more than he does. When he is surrounded by bear traps, he steps back without looking and obviously gets caught in one, and he can even die from just falling over. He can die from drowning. He can die from being in the bushes and not saying, hey, I'm Jacob, don't shoot. And then added on to that, if he gets infected and turns into a werewolf, he has a very irrational turn. So it's everything. And even if he's not turning into a werewolf in that scene, he does cry in the woods and just is depressed. So I don't think there really is any rational moment for Jacob, which is actually really unfortunate. I feel bad, but he's definitely getting a 1 for this category. I think he might be the most irrational character in the entire game. And then with Max, he's decently rational. He does have an irrational turn when he turns into a werewolf. He'll always do this. But other than that, he's pretty rational just as himself, and he doesn't really prove himself either way. I don't think he does anything that proves him rational or irrational. He just follows Laura and he does whatever. And I feel like I can respect that. So I feel like he's just middle of the road 3. I can't think of any examples that prove him either way. So I think he's just chilling. So, you know what? That's Max. So Laura's survival instinct is pretty good. I mean, she has a lot of plot armor, which means she'll make it through a lot of the game without being able to die. You can't kill her. She's also in control of all of her deaths. She won't die unless you, as the player playing as her, does something wrong to kill her, which I think is important on someone's survival instinct because it means no other player can kill her. So if she's killed by Travis, it's because you messed up while you were playing as her in the flashback. And then all of her deaths after she turns from being into a werewolf are on her. Like, it's if she doesn't get the gun from Travis. If the car accident happens, it's because she didn't get there in time, or if she dies in the woods, it's because she didn't shoot Silas. So no other character is able to kill her. Gameplay-wise, there are some stuff with her that will always happen that you can't prevent that I feel like should be included in Survival Instinct, because part of the survival of this game is not becoming a werewolf. So she'll always get bit by Max and be infected, and she'll always turn into a werewolf, and there's nothing you can do as the player to stop her from that. And then also, if she dooms herself to be killed by Travis, later on when she's killed by Travis, there's nothing you can do to save her. So there's not like a QTE, which I don't like that she can't fight for herself in that moment, and it just is a little bit disappointing. So I do think that she has one of the best survival instincts of the game, specifically with her plot armor, but I do think she's at a 4 just because of the fact that you can't prevent her getting bit and you can't stop Travis when he murders her. I guess she can also die if Ryan doesn't shoot Chris Hackett, so I guess he is in control of that death for her. So that also is not great, but then everyone dies, so it's like no one survives that. Like I was saying with Laura, Ryan has a lot of plot armor and he'll always make it to that final scene. He does always get stabbed and he'll always have to be bit to survive, and if he doesn't get bit, then he'll bleed out and die no matter what, and there's nothing you can do to save him, which I guess the thing to save him would have been to have him bit. But he does have to be infected to be able to survive the night. Once you get past the final scene in the Hackett house, then Ryan, Laura, and Travis will go out to find Silas. If they get in the car accident, Ryan will just die in the car accident. Like, he doesn't even have a special death here. Like, he'll just die from the car accident. I feel like since he can't do anything for himself in that situation, he isn't a 5. And he'll just die in the woods, too, if Laura doesn't shoot Silas, unless he does have the blood. But that applies to anyone with the blood. So I do think he's also at a 4 like Laura, because he has a lot of deaths, but he does have a lot of plot armor, and he can survive for a majority of this game. Now, Caitlin, along with Laura and Ryan, also has severe plot armor, where she makes it a pretty decent way. She doesn't make it as far as them, but she does make it far. I feel like Caitlin faces so many tough situations, and she's just able to pretty easily survive through it all. Like, even in the junkyard, where I don't think she can die if Dylan is there, and in that final scene, like, she just has so many ways she can survive that, and I think it's really impressive to watch her be able to do all that. She just goes through so much crap, and like when Emma attacks at the car, like, she can't die in that situation either. So I feel like she has severe survival instinct. Not only does she herself have good survival instinct, but she's also in control of a lot of other characters' deaths. Dylan, Abby, Emma, and Caleb. She's in control of all of those characters' deaths, which is a lot of people. She goes through a lot in this game, but she's able to survive it all. So I think she deserves a 5. I think this is where she really shines, and she's able to face anything that comes her way. Dylan's survival instinct isn't as strong, specifically since he's always with Caitlin and he's the one who's disposable. So anytime Caitlin fails, Dylan is the one who will die. Because if she doesn't shoot Emma at the car, then Dylan will die. And if something goes wrong at the junkyard, Dylan will die. And if something goes wrong in the finale with Caleb, Dylan will die. So Dylan doesn't really defend himself, which I think speaks a lot for his lack of survival instinct. He also, a majority of the time, will get bitten and have to cut off his hand, so he can't stop himself really from that. It only depends on Abby and Emma at the beginning of the game. So I don't think he has the best survival instinct, but I definitely don't think it's the worst. So I think he's at a 2, just because Caitlin is the one who has to defend him the entire game. While Abby is really calm and collected, all of her deaths are usually just like instant. Like, she doesn't really get to fight for her life as much. The best example of this is if she decides to not shoot Nick, she'll just die and he'll run up to her and kill her and you don't even have a QTE. This also happens if Caitlin doesn't shoot Emma at the car. She'll go and attack Abby and Abby will die. If Abby chooses to run up the stairs in the basement, she'll just die. There's no QTE there. There's a lot of times where she'll just die. She also has a very early death, and she's very difficult to save. I think Abby, along with Jacob, is one of the most difficult people to save in this game, but she does also always survive her first instance with the werewolves in the woods, so I don't think she's at a 1. I think she deserves to be at a 2, just because she does have a lot of deaths where there's not much you can do if you make a wrong decision earlier. and there's no QTE to save her. Like, she won't fight for her life, she'll just die. Nick's survival instinct is pretty easy to figure out because he'll always get bitten in the woods. There's nothing you can do to prevent that. He'll always get captured by the Hacketts as the werewolf. And if Laura shoots him, which is not even in his control, then he'll die. And that's his only death in the game. And if he's cured from the werewolf curse, it's because of Laura. So he does not have any say in the entire game of any survival. He never proves himself really of any survival instinct throughout the game. So he's definitely out of one. He'll always get bit. He'll die if Laura decides to shoot him, and he'll survive if Laura decides to save him. That's his only options. He can't choose anything for himself. Emma's tough to say survival instinct because she's guaranteed survival so early in the game, so she doesn't really face much, but what she faces is really tough, and her survival instinct is really shown through her biggest chase scene. Now, if Emma opens the trapdoor early without finding any weapon, then she'll instantly die, which makes sense, but it's kind of a stupid decision for her to make, which she definitely can't make. But if she has a weapon, she's able to survive in a lot of different ways. When she's running, she uses the zip line. She can go up the trapdoor. She can try to block the door. Any decision you make there will always result in a pretty good outcome as long as you pass the QTEs. I think watching her run through the treehouse and zip line back to safety on the other island is just showing her survival instinct. Like, she definitely has a decent survival instinct, or else she would not be able to do what she's doing in this scene. She does have a lot of deaths in this scene, so she can very easily die, but I feel like the way she handles herself in this situation is really impressive. And if she escapes the island not bitten, then she's guaranteed to survive the game. So she has the earliest guarantee of survival than any other character, which I think is really interesting. But that also means that she doesn't face a lot and she doesn't put herself in scary situations, because when she's back at the lodge, she will go in the basement and not come back out because she just wants to be safe, which is very fair. I do think since she dies instantly with the trapdoor and she has a lot of deaths on the island, she's at a 3, just kind of middle of the road, because she does prove herself a lot, but she does also have a lot of deaths. So, but her survival instinct is very impressive in that scene, and it's a really fun scene to watch. I believe Jacob has the most deaths throughout the game, and also just the most unique deaths. Like, he can drown, he can fall in the bear trap, he can get shot in the bushes, he can die in the cage to the werewolf, he can die in the woods to the werewolf. Like, he has so many different deaths. He's also the first one to die of the game, and it's such a dumb death, like just getting caught in chains and drowning. Like, that has nothing to do with the Hacketts, that has nothing to do with the werewolves. Like, that's just his stupidity. I think the fact that he puts himself in all of these situations and then he just like walks back into the bear trap, or he's not speaking while he's behind the bushes so they don't know who it is, and he's not even the one who can get himself out of the cage. He has to have Ryan save him. I just don't think he has very good survival instinct. But he can escape the werewolf during his chase scene through the woods, so I think that he has somewhat, and he's not as useless as like Nick, who has no say in any of his survival. So I think Jacob is safely at a 2, just because like he can survive and try to save himself, but he does die a lot, and it's very stupid deaths. And then Max's survival instinct is very non-existent. Like, he, no matter what, will always be bit by the werewolf. He'll turn into the werewolf. He can't free himself from the curse. Laura has to help him, who then is helped by Ryan. And then if Max is freed from the curse, the only way that he'll survive is if he just stays on the island where it's safe. Like, any contact Max ever has with a werewolf, he's getting bitten or dying. Like, he has no chance against any werewolf. There's never a situation where he can fight for himself and save himself. Like, if he goes near a werewolf, he's bitten, and if he goes near the werewolf at the end, he's dying. So he doesn't really show any survival instinct, and there's no way that you as the player can save him if you want to with like QTEs or something. I think it's safe to say that he's also at a 1, which unlike Nick, he can choose to swim to the island, but just the fact that if he even goes near werewolves, he'll die instantly with no chance of QTEs, I think that says that he's also at a 1 for survival instinct. So now that all the category rankings are done, we can look at the final ranking of all the characters. At number 9 is Jacob with 5 points. This is not surprising. Like how Josh was last in my Until Dawn video, Jacob, the flawed character, being last makes sense because these categories are about good people and he is just not a good person. He tends to be really annoying, he's really selfish, so it doesn't surprise me that he did so poorly in all these categories. I'm not a huge fan of him, but I also just know that he's not that good of a character, and that's the reason that he's in last place. At number 8 is Emma with 6 points. That is not surprising either, just because she's not a nice person. She's very cruel and selfish. I actually really like Emma, and she would be really high on my personal ranking of just my preference. But actually, like, as a person, she's not that great. And she does a lot of things through the game that are really rude to other people, and she doesn't have much of an arc to where she learns from all that. I do think that she deserves to be low on an overall ranking. At number 7 is Max. I think Max is just low because we never get to know him as well, and he's kind of middle of the road for all the categories. I do really like Max, and I think he's great for what he is. Like, he's almost not a real character. The only reason he's on this ranking is because you do get to play as him, and he's so associated with Laura that he becomes, like, somewhat of a character. But I do wish he were in the game more. It's okay that he's not, but I think that he would have been fun to play as throughout the game. But unfortunately, you don't get to have that decision. At number 6 is Ryan with 8 points. Ryan has the most gameplay in the game, so I guess it is kind of surprising that he would be this low on the ranking. But he really isn't that great of a person. Even though he has a lot of gameplay, it doesn't make him a great guy. He tends to be selfish, he tends to be moody, but I will say that he does put others first sometimes, which is why he isn't last on the list, and I think he becomes a bigger character than he or anyone would think that he would be. At number 5 is Nick with 9 points. Nick is a really great guy, even though he turns into a werewolf for a majority of the game. I think he really shows his true personality before he turns, and he's just a really great dude and doesn't have much time to make a lot of flaws, so I guess we just see the best part of him, which helps. But I do really think that he's a nice guy, and I think he's the most mature guy in this game. It's unfortunate that he turns into a werewolf as early as he does, but someone has to be the first casualty, so I guess that sucks for him. At number 4 is Dylan with 10 points. I feel like Dylan, to a lot of people, is just kind of a joke because he is always making jokes and he's not really taken that seriously. But he really does what needs to be done when it comes down to it. Like, he proves himself. I've said this already, but I really do think the junkyard is his best scene. Like, that is him in control. And he's so associated with Caitlin, who always takes over everything. And the fact that he is the one controlling that situation lets him make the decisions and shows his leadership skills that he doesn't really want to have, but he does have. And maybe if Caitlin weren't around, he'd be more of a leader in situations than he is. At number 3 is Laura with 11 points. I personally think Laura is the best character in the game. I think it's so much fun to think that she's a goner in the first scene and then she comes back and becomes the hero. But I do see with some of her personality flaws that she would not be the best character with these categories. I think there are some other characters who are a little bit more caring towards others, which isn't really her fault because she doesn't know anyone else besides Max, so that makes sense that he would be the only person she really cares about. But I do love her loyalty to Max, and I do like to watch her relationship with Ryan get better when they're at the Hackett house trying to survive. I think that partnership is really strong, and I think that they make a great team, and I think her and Max make a great team as well. At number 2 is Abby with 12 points. This is very surprising to me. I mean, Abigail just flies under the radar without getting noticed because that's who she is, like that's literally her personality, but she really does do a lot of great things. She's a great character, she's very rational, her survival instinct isn't as good, but it's decent. Like, she actually does have some gameplay where she has to survive. I do think that Abby is probably the most mature person in this game, just with the way that she handles herself in every situation. I think it's impressive to watch her keep her cool when she is so innocent and not as out there as some of the other characters. Like, she proves that she can handle really tough things that happen to her. And at number 1 is Caitlin with 13 points. I think Caitlin is a great character overall. I think my only critique with her would be that she's not very dynamic. Like, she starts out the game great and then she ends out the game great. I would have liked to see more growth with her. I would have liked to see a deeper dive into maybe some of her insecurities and flaws. But for what the game needs, she is perfect because she's able to help everyone survive, keep everyone safe, keep her cool, has great survival instinct, has great character, is rational. she's just got it all, and it's not surprising to me at all that she would be number 1 on this list. But that's my character analysis of all the playable characters in the Quarry. Like I said in my Until Dawn video, there are so many different ways that this could be done with different categories. People could have different opinions on what all these characters deserve in these categories. So if you have a different ranking of the characters, let me know what they are, because I know that there are so many different things that I probably forgot. And there's a lot that happens in this game, and the fact that it's a choose your own adventure and you could play the game for a character one way that's really selfless and then another way that's really selfish is just interesting. Like, there's so many different outcomes, and that's why it's hard to rank exactly what they are, because it depends on the game that you play. But I am curious to know what other people think and if there's anything that I forgot, which is probably very likely because there's so much in this game. I'm not as familiar with this game as I am Until Dawn. I love Until Dawn. I've played it so many times, and the Quarry is a little bit more unfamiliar to me. Whenever I play that one, I find something new because I just don't know it as well. So this was interesting to do it on characters that I'm not as familiar with, but I do love most of these characters in this game, and I think they're all really interesting for what they're supposed to be. But that's it for today. Goodbye.